Lots to cover, but first, some news. In what may be his first major move to the left on policy as a 2020 presidential candidate, Catholic Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden has endorsed repealing the Hyde Amendment, a measure that prohibits federal funding of abortion except in cases of rape, incest, or when the mother's life is in danger. The announcement marks the latest evolution in Biden's views on abortion over a 50-year career. Shortly after the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision found a legal right to an abortion throughout pregnancy, Biden said in a profile with Washingtonian magazine that he did not agree with the court's conclusion. 12 years ago, in 2007, in his book, Promises to Keep, he described his position on abortion as middle of the road, and he reiterated his opposition to both federal funding of abortions and partial birth abortions. Meanwhile, Governor of Louisiana John Bel Edwards, a Catholic Democrat, said on Tuesday he will sign a bill banning abortions after the detection of a fetal heartbeat if the legislation arrives on his desk. The bill still needs approval by the House. If enacted into law, it would ban abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected, usually around 6 weeks into pregnancy. Similar laws have been passed in several states, including Kentucky, Georgia, Mississippi, Ohio. Last year, Edwards signed a bill to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The governor also cited his Catholic faith as influencing his pro-life beliefs. And after his Wednesday audience, Pope Francis asked Our Lady help of Christians to intercede for Chinese Catholics, whom he said continue to believe and hope amid trials. Dear faithful in China, our Heavenly Mother will help you all to be witnesses of charity and fraternity, keeping you always united in the communion of the universal Church, said the Pope. Pope Benedict XVI established the custom of praying for China on the Marian Feast in 2007. He composed a prayer then to Our Lady of Shishan for the occasion. Pope Francis's prayer for unity with Chinese Catholics has added significance following the signing of a provisional agreement between Beijing and the Holy See last September. The Chinese Communist Party has continued to persecute Christian Catholics and other religious believers in the wake of the agreement by demolishing Marian shrines and forbidding religious practice of anyone under the age of 18. And Archbishop Wilton Gregory was installed as the new Archbishop of Washington on Tuesday at the National Shrine here in D.C. He was welcomed by outgoing Cardinal Donald Wuerl, who was named, you'll remember, in the Pennsylvania grand jury report for allegedly mishandling abuse cases. Another reminder of the crisis was the presence of Roger Mahony, the former Archbishop of Los Angeles, whose ministry was curtailed there because of his mishandling of abuse cases. For analysis on all of this, we're joined by a member of the Papal Posse, Father GERALD Murray, canon lawyer and priest of the Archdiocese of New York. He joins us from Manhattan. Father, thank you for being here. I want to start with the Gregory installation here in D.C. Michelle Borstein of the Washington Post was one of the few reporters I saw to write about the presence of Cardinal Roger Mahony at this event, and she tweeted throughout the day on Thursday the following. She said, Mahony update, I can't say for certain what happened. In a 2013 letter condemning Mahony's record on abuse and saying Mahony had apologized, Gomez, Archbishop Gomez of L.A., said Mahony would no longer have any official public duties, then said he still has all his rights. Gomez's office now tells me the Archbishop was just noting that the Cardinal didn't have duties because he was retiring. But Mahony retired 2 years earlier, and that letter was completely focused on Mahony's failings on abuse. I've asked for more clarity, Borstein writes. Your thoughts on the presence of Mahony at this installation Mass?
Well, given all the scandals in the Washington Archdiocese and certainly with former Cardinal McCarrick, the presence of a cardinal who was also under question for his handling of accusations of sexual abuse in Los Angeles, the fact that he thought it was a good idea to go, I don't agree with that decision. I think it would have been better if he were not there, because again, it focuses attention on the failures of some American bishops and cardinals in the past, whereas I think Archbishop Gregory wants to focus on efforts to rebuild the trust of the people by actually not repeating those mistakes.
Yeah. What message do you think it sends faithful Catholics, particularly those victims of abuse and those concerned about the Church's approach to not only sexual abuse, but those who facilitated it?
Well, the whole story is yet to be told, and this is something that needs to be looked at. We were told that the diocese where McCarrick had served were doing an investigation of their files. We've yet to see the results of that. The Holy See likewise says it was going to look at its files. So far, no revelation of what they found. The Los Angeles situation, of course, involved litigation. One of the highest settlements ever paid was paid over there. Yes, Archbishop Gomez was not pleased when he first came to L.A. about what had happened there. Yeah. Yet Cardinal Mahoney did continue activities in that archdiocese and also elsewhere. So. Yeah. Right now, there seems to be a lack of seriousness that people be held accountable for what they did in the past and shouldn't, continue to act in the way they would if they had done nothing.
No, it reminds you of the McCarrick situation where he was privately told, keep it down, stay out of public view, and personally he was flitting around all over the place at every dinner and gala he could get himself invited to. Archbishop Gregory acknowledged the abuse crisis, Father, and he had this to say at his installation Mass. Watch.
We clerics and hierarchs have irrefutably been the source of this current tempest. When Jesus Christ, with the phrase, "in a breath," finally leads us out of the storm of our own making, may he not feel compelled to admonish us for exhibiting a collective lack of confidence in him, but rather to be proud of the undaunted, uncompromising faith that we never lost.
Father, this is not the first time Gregory has dealt with the abuse crisis. He presided over the 2004 Dallas Conference and those Dallas norms that became the law of the land as president of the Bishops' Conference. What challenge does he face coming into D.C., and is he the right man for the job?
Well, Pope Francis picked him, so I'm going to support him, as I think we all should. On the other hand, we should also hold him to his word. If he wants to overcome the history here of abuse, cover-up, lack of honesty, the McCarrick thing is still an immense scandal that is yet to be fully addressed by the American hierarchy. Archbishop Gregory worked with McCarrick back in 2002 on those norms.
Right.
And it was interesting, back then he announced at the bishops' meeting, he said, if any of the bishops here present have been guilty of these crimes of sexual abuse, please turn yourselves in to the nuncio. Well, nobody did, and that's part of the legacy that we're dealing with here. It's only been when the police or investigative reporters or brave victims come forward that we find out about the crimes of hierarchs and priests. So we've got to be more serious. It would be very good if Archbishop Gregory announced that he was going to give a history of how the Archdiocese has dealt with things under the last two archbishops, and then answer questions that have risen from, the different testimonies given. Archbishop Vigano, the witnesses regarding the actions of McCarrick and other dioceses when Cardinal Wuerl was in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. What's the whole history there? It would be good if we knew these things.
Yeah. Well, Pope Francis signed a motu proprio entitled "You Are the Light of the World," which issued new norms for reporting and investigating clergy abuse. Now, among other things, the new law stipulates that abuse or cover-up by bishops must be brought to the attention of the Metropolitan Archbishop. But in the case of that the Metropolitan is accused of abuse, similar to what Cardinal McCarrick was charged with, reporting can be done directly to the Holy See through the papal representative in the country. If the person accused is the nuncio, the allegation must be sent directly to the Vatican Secretariat of State. Father, this motu proprio does broaden the definition of vulnerable adults, make some critical canonical adjustments. Your thoughts on this idea of metropolitans being the investigators for errant bishops? Does that work? Isn't that what we had before, in essence?
Well, there's a difference now because the metropolitan, meaning the archbishop in an area, in a region, he will not investigate these alleged malefactor bishops on his own. He will have a mandate from the Holy See. So he's really acting on behalf of the Pope in doing so. And now he is held to standards that are quite clear. The investigation must take place within 3 months, 90 days. There can be an extension if he needs it. but the Vatican wants quick resolution of the problem. And in doing so, as the local bishop, he will hopefully have the resources of the diocese and of the Catholic Church of the United States to assist him. And, we're pretty good at that, I think, through our investigative boards and lay expertise. Certainly there's a willingness that I'm hearing all over the place for laity to assist bishops trying to root out this problem. So if a local metropolitan takes this seriously, I think we will see good results.
Father Jerry, do these new norms, does this new motu proprio establish clear penalties for abusers and bishops complicit in the cover-ups?
It does not, and that's one of the problems with this new law. In fact, looking at some canonical commentators already on the new norms, these norms were not that well crafted, in my opinion. There are good things, there are improvements. For instance, the abuse of authority to commit acts of sexual abuse against minors or vulnerable adults. That's good, but we also have this new canonical crime identified of the cover-up, actions or omissions designed to prevent either a canonical or a civil investigation. So there's an expansion now of what is formally recognized in church law of how you can investigate a situation. And this was really, I think, very, very important because people are very horrified when priests commit acts of sexual abuse, but in a certain sense, they're even more horrified when the people in charge find out about it and do nothing. Now there's a means to hold them accountable. Yeah. In that case, you can report directly to the nuncio. I think Bishop X covered this up. I want you to investigate. Right. And the nuncio is bound now to forward that to Rome. So I think there's some very important progress here.
Now, under these new norms, anyone can file a report. Anyone can come forward, and they must be taken seriously. Will previous actions be subject to this new law? And I'm thinking of situations like the charges against Cardinal Maradiaga in Honduras, where they claim there was a bishop under him who had a circle of sexual abuse going on at a seminary.
Yes, well, I think previous cover-ups will be covered by this law. In canon law, there's a principle of non-retroactivity, so new laws don't cover past crimes. But in this case, the new law is not really a new law. It's a formalization of what's already existing Vatican policy. Remember, McCarrick was convicted not only of sexual abuse of minors, but also of abuse of authority as regards seminarians. So, yeah, in the case of Cardinal Maradiaga, his seminary was basically a hotbed of conflict because there was a large group of homosexual seminarians and they were tolerated. And a group of seminarians, a large, significant group, 45, wrote a letter to complain about it. And Cardinal Maradiaga dismissed the letter. And one of the seminarians was quoted as saying, if you go against what's happening in the seminary, you get expelled. So I think there's already plenty of evidence that people could take to the nuncio in Honduras, and say, we believe that there was a cover-up here. We believe people were harmed. We'd like to have an investigation to find out whether those charges are true.
Troubling. I want to shift gears, talk about something happening here in the United States in California. The state Senate is due to vote on a bill entitled the Child Abuse and Neglect Reporting Act, which demands that a priest and other clergy file a report should they learn of abuse in confession or counseling. Now, Archbishop Gomez of Los Angeles and the Catholic Conference out there in California argue that this is an assault on religious freedom, particularly on the seal of confession. Your thoughts?
No, it absolutely is, Raymond. This is an attempt, an encroachment on the free exercise of religion, which is a constitutional right guaranteed. In fact, freedom of religion is the first right guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. So to do this, to attempt to do this in California really is offensive, and it needs to be resisted completely because priests are under pain of excommunication if they reveal what they hear in confession. And in no way in a free country should people's conscience be violated when they try to exercise a religious ministry. People go to confession with the expectation what they say will not be heard. Now, let me say this. If a priest hears from a penitent that someone has committed a crime of sexual abuse against them, the priest is bound, morally speaking, to tell that penitent, well, please bring this to the attention of some authority figure. Go to, if you're a minor, go to your parents. You can go to the police if you want. You can go to a doctor, psychologist, somebody. But don't ask me to report it, because I'm not going to violate what you've told me in confession. But we're not here trying to hide crimes. No, the purpose is to protect people's rights to be able to exercise the sacrament of penance with freedom and without encroachment by the state.
Now, it is, as you mentioned, it's a canonical violation of the highest magnitude for a priest to break the seal of confession. Is there any way that he can report or go to another party to suggest that there might be a situation somewhere without violating the seal?
No, because, you know, the person who confesses that incident, and if it's a criminal act against a minor, it's definitely horrible, but it's up to that minor to then make it known, because otherwise, you know, people say, well, the minor could give him permission to go reveal it. That's very imprudent. Because people might not believe that. The minor might change his mind under pressure and say, no, the priest revealed it, I'm mad at him. There are all kinds of circumstances. No, it's up to the priest, and, you know, we priests have a lot of ability, I think, to convince people to do something that's hard and say, look, what you did was horrible. To prevent more people from going through it, please go tell somebody about this crime and have that priest arrested. Yeah,
and confession is protected by law in the United States. But in light of the abuse crisis, could we see more states trying to change this or circumscribe this practice of confession?
I think so. You know, there was a judge down in Louisiana who did this a couple of years ago, and that was overturned. No, you know, let's face it, Raymond, the Catholic Church is always a target for certain parts of our society and our political class. So, you know, if you can minimize the influence of the Catholic Church by, you know, creating this false narrative that we're protecting and hiding priests by not revealing what we hear in confession, well, then, you know, they're going to try it. But, you know, this is where believers have to say, look, in the United States of America, one of the reasons why our forefathers came is religious freedom. Do not attack religious freedom.
I got to talk about something happening at the Capitol this week. H.R. 5, the so-called Equality Act, passed the House on Friday by a margin of 236 to 173. The sweeping legislation would amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to include sexual orientation and gender identity as protected characteristics. Now, the bill redefines sex to include gender identity. Some claim it undermines religious freedom, giving males who identify as females the right to women's spaces. How might this bill affect women's shelters, Father, or single-sex schools, or faith-based foster care?
Well, it affects everything because it's introducing a fiction or a lie into the law. Everyone is born male or female. They're not assigned to be a male or a female by the doctor or nurse at the delivery. They are a male or a female. Someone who claims later on in life that they're not what they are is entering the world of fantasy. And we do not tell people that they should live in a world of fantasy. You have to live in reality. You know, if a white man says, I'm really black, you got to call me a black man now, we just say to them, that's ridiculous. You're either white or you're black. It's the way you were born. Now, as regards our institutions, you know, this is a real problem. If you have a single-sex school, we have many high schools like that in the Catholic Church in the United States, to compel the school to admit boys who claim to be girls will undermine the freedom of that school to exercise, you know, religious training of girls as its mission. I think it's very dangerous. We already have in Connecticut, you know, female track events are now dominated by men claiming to be women. You know, if there's one religion in America, it's sports. So I think, you know, Martina Navratilova might be heralding a rebellion of women against males trying to take over, you know, female sports.
Yeah, well, there was a power lift competition this past week, and there was a woman breaking record after record, winning 9 straight awards, and they ended up stripping the contestant of all the prizes because it was a biological male. And they said, you know, by the rules of this competition, if you're not a biological male or female, if you're not a biological female, we can't let you compete against women. Of course you're going to break every record. So we are seeing this conflict in the, you know, secular sphere. But I think when it comes to religious practice and religious liberties, we're going to see I think, a titanic battle at the courts over gender identification and the right to practice faith vis-a-vis foster care, schooling, just Boy Scouts and Girl Scout groups in a parish. All of this, I think, is going to be up for grabs.
I think you're right. What about if a woman claims to be a man and tries to enroll in a seminary and then is told, I'm sorry, we only train men for the priesthood because only men can be ordained, and then that woman sues claiming she's really a man. This is why insane laws, it started with abortion, saying that an unborn child is not a person deserving of respect. Once you get into the world of fiction, then it's the powerful who start imposing their will on the weak. The weak have to say, no, we're strong, because not only are we strong in the sight of the Lord, we know what reason teaches us. You are either a male or a female. There's no other possibility.
We talked about this a little earlier, Father, but it brings to mind the report about Joe Biden, who was at one time a pro-life Catholic representative, then a senator, then vice president, and over time his position on abortion evolved. Now he is for lifting the Hyde Amendment completely, which bars federal funding of abortions, and he's really for no restrictions at all. We're seeing this across the political spectrum. Speaker Nancy Pelosi this week also offended by any restrictions or limitations on abortion. She said this is the product of white men trying to impose their will on others. Your thoughts on Catholic representatives behaving this way, and do you think we'll hear anything from the bishops?
Well, we'll hear from some bishops, I'm sure. Certainly, the Bishops' Pro-Life Committee has been very strong against this. This is the sad state of religion in the United States now, where people who claim to be Catholic and or say they're proud of their Catholic faith reject the teaching of the faith and castigate those who uphold it. It is a disgrace for Vice President Biden to claim that, being a good Catholic includes his support of the right to kill unborn children. It goes for all of them. Speaker Pelosi's position is so inconsistent. This is like saying, well, slavery is horrible, but I affirm your right to own slaves if you decide that's what you want to do. It's all predicated on treating the unborn child as a non-person. And that's, that's really at the root of this. We do not treat fellow human beings as non-persons and call that moral. That's an immoral way of looking at things. So it's very regrettable, but, it's a free country. It's one of the beautiful things about America. We can get up there and denounce these falsehoods and challenge these people. And, the pro-life side is winning in this country. I'm firmly convinced of that. Thank God for EWTN and so many other outlets that promote true knowledge of what abortion is about. But, Senator Biden or Vice President Biden, he ought to go home, read the catechism, and then realize that he is engaging in a major fraud in saying that he can be a good Catholic and support abortion.
Yeah, he said he's got a moderate position, but I think it's some are hard
Tell
pressed
that to the dead children.
Oh, well, good response. This past weekend was the March for Life in Italy. And we've been hearing of several states in the U.S. passing these heartbeat bills, no abortion after 6 weeks. Alabama essentially banned abortion last week. Now, our pal Robert Royal wrote about this, and he feels there's a new pro-life movement emerging. Do you believe that that's what we're seeing? A new moment?
I think so, Raymond. Yeah, new moment. I do, because, the abortion license, and Father Newhouse was the most eloquent denouncers of it, has engulfed, now a couple of generations of Americans. And people are looking at it and say, well, what in the world really is abortion? And once they see sonograms, once they see movies like Gosnell and Unplanned, they can't hide behind this lie and falsehood that Planned Parenthood propagates that it's only a clump of tissue. No, it isn't. No one's threatened by a clump of tissue. If you have a clump of tissue, well, what is it, But it's not a clump of tissue. It's a human being.
It's called a tumor. Yeah, you remove it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and tumors are pathologies. Babies are the natural fruit of human love, and that's how you and I got here, and the rest of the audience. So we ought to rejoice in the fact that, God allows the human race to continue, and we should say those who want to kill people in the human race, they're the ones who have to stop. So yeah, it's very encouraging to see all these local pro-life efforts. I think, like the Students for Life and, all the pro-life work of Lila Rose. These people are calling America, in the best tradition of America, calling her conscience to wake up, realize there's an evil in our midst, banish the evil, and then with loving concern help women with difficult pregnancies. That's what the Catholic Church does.
I got to ask you before I let you go, there's a drama that's been playing out in the New York Archdiocese for years now over the remains of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Now, his remains are there at the crypt at St. Patrick's Cathedral. His family has sued for possession of those remains because they want his cause for sainthood to advance, and the Vatican has asked that the remains be moved to Peoria. But for whatever reason, the New York Archdiocese will not release them. They filed to appeal a ruling, and it's been repeatedly upheld by 4 courts now, to hand the remains over to his family and move them to Peoria. What do you think is driving this? And why isn't the solution that we've seen in churches all over Rome, all over the world, Father, why wouldn't that solve this, where you take the skull and you leave that at St. Patrick's and the rest of the body you transfer to Peoria?
Well, I'm in New York, but I'm not party to any of these deliberations that the Archdiocese has engaged in. I do know, and it is a public fact, that Fulton Sheen requested to be buried in Calvary Cemetery,
Correct.
which is an archdiocesan cemetery. Cardinal Cook, at the time, though, said, no, we're going to honor you by burying you in the crypt of St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is basically reserved for the deceased archbishops, but he was given that honor.
Right.
Now, it's a legal question, who has the right? And that's, American law, we all have to live with that. So if the Archdiocese can muster enough arguments to defend his position, so be it. But if not, well, maybe a brokered solution might be good. As you say, leave a relic here in New York, but these are difficult matters. I mean, this is something the Church faces. We treat saints or people we think might be saints as special, but they do have families, and families have legal rights over the disposition of their remains.
Yeah. Father Jerry, thank you as always. A happy Memorial Day, and we will catch up with you soon.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you. As always, you can find commentary by Father Gerald Murray at thecatholicthing.org.